On a pleasant Monday morning or afternoon now to you and yours, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast here on PHLY. Tyler Zulli with you once again. Hope you had an incredible weekend. I will do my best to keep my voice from cracking too much. Idiot me decided that I was going to go to a concert on a Sunday night like I was 21 years old again, and definitely paying for it this morning. But we're here. A big hello to everybody in the chat early on in this episode as well. Big thank you to Julia for producing today's show, as well as Joey for associate producing his on the Anthony Gargano show as well. We got a lot to get into today and only a half an hour, a very finite timeline to do it. So let's jump right into things because I think it's been pretty well documented, my adoration for Cristopher Sanchez on this show. It started 2 years ago, really, in the end of 2023. I thought there were signs there that showed that Cristopher Sanchez could be a dude, and not just an arm. Like there were tangible things that I looked at, and I said, this guy has the makings of a true. At the time I said like middle of the rotation starter. You could see the fastball velocity had inched up a little bit in 2023. The changeup was always an excellent pitch. It was always his best pitch. But the fastball had gotten a little bit better. The slider got a little bit better. The confidence got a little bit better. And I think that you saw in 2023, he was a guy who handled major league hitters enough. They used him in the postseason, and it was a really small sample size. I think he only went like 2 innings against Arizona. I forget exactly what it was, but he didn't pitch very much in the NLCS against the Diamondbacks. But he got major league experience and he got playoff experience as well. Last year, I was bullish on Sanchez because of the fact that I thought that a full season as a everyday starter was going to do a lot of good for him. I did not expect the maturation to come within the first month of the season, 2 months of the season, where you saw a lefty who was poised, controlled, threw a complete game shutout against the Marlins early in the season, and for the most part, was really, really good throughout the course of 2024. Made his first All-Star game, finished the regular season with a 11-9 record, a 3.3 ERA, made 31 starts last season, threw over 180 innings, nearly doubled his innings cap from 2023 to 2024, and all of the metrics were great. The chase rates were excellent. Doesn't walk a ton of guys, doesn't get hit particularly hard, keeps the ball on the ground. All of the metrics tell you that Cristopher Sanchez had an excellent 2024. And then my question was, what is the follow-up year? Like, what is the like full year 2 look like? What's going to now be his 3rd full season, but his 2nd full season entrenched as a starter for the Phillies. What kind of a leap does he take? Is it a small one, which would still signal that he had an excellent season? Is it a large one that would put him into the conversation of being a top-of-the-line rotation guy? And I'm starting to get to a point now where I'm more leaning on the latter than I am the former. I think Cristopher Sanchez has the makings of being a top-of-the-rotation starter. Not a 1. I don't think he has the makings to be a true ace. That belongs to Zach Wheeler still. And I've been on the record as saying I think there aren't 30 aces in baseball. Now, there may be more than one ace on a team if a team has an excellent pitching staff, but I think over the course of 30 teams, there aren't 30 aces. The Phillies have one in Zach Wheeler. Cristopher Sanchez, I am expecting massive things in 2025 from Cristopher Sanchez. Now, I'm sure you've seen by now. Yesterday, Sanchez got the start for the Phillies in the spring training game against the Orioles. Ended up getting into the 3rd. He did give up 2 runs, one of which was earned, but he struck out 5 of the 8 batters that he recorded outs on, which was impressive in and of itself because Sanchez isn't a huge strikeout rate guy. Finished in the 28th percentile of strikeouts, struck out about 20% of the hitters he faced last season. Sanchez relies upon good stuff, good location, good mix, a lot of ground balls, but he's not a heavy strikeout pitcher. Struck out 5 of the 8 hitters he saw in Sunday's game. Now, it's spring training. Guys are working through stuff. I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say that he's going to strike out 40% of the hitters he's going to face, because first and foremost, nobody's going to do that. But I do think that there is merit to say that 20% will rise in 2025. And the reason that I think that is because you saw pretty routinely yesterday that Cristopher Sanchez was pumping 97, 98 miles an hour. He didn't throw a single sinker of the 29 that he threw yesterday below 95 miles an hour. He threw 98 4 times. He threw 97 12 times. He averaged 96.9 on the gun, just shy of 97 miles an hour per average. To put that kind of into perspective from what you saw a season ago, that would have been almost 2.5 miles an hour faster than what he produced on average in 2024. Would have been almost 4 miles an hour faster than what he produced in 2023. Cristopher Sanchez, when he was in Tampa Bay and then when he was traded to the Phillies, one of the things that the Phillies staff, and I think Tampa Bay staff to a lesser extent, said to Cristopher Sanchez was, dial it back. Bring your velocity down. We know you can throw hard, but we need you to become a pitcher instead of a thrower. And so they said, dial your velocity back, get your command under control, don't walk guys, work on your changeup, work on your slider, work on your fastball, and then we can figure out the velocity from there because you have it in you. It's a slender frame, and he still throws hard. And they said, hey, give us 93, 94. Learn how to pitch, and we'll come back to this velocity at another time. Well, that another time is now. The velocity is there, and now Cristopher Sanchez knows how to pitch. And not only does he know how to pitch, he knows how to pitch against major league hitters. Last year, Cristopher Sanchez ranked 94th amongst qualified pitchers in average sinker velocity at 94.5 miles an hour. If he were to find a way to sit the 96.9 on average that he threw yesterday, now granted, it's a lot more difficult to do in a 31, 32, 33 game sample size than it is in spring training when you know you're kind of emptying the tank over 30, 35 pitches. But if he finds a way to sit in that 96, 97 that he threw yesterday, that would be tied for 23rd with Dylan Cease and Gavin Williams from a season ago. He would have jumped up nearly 20, or would have jumped up over 20 spots. Would have jumped up over 70 spots in terms of average sinker velocity. So the velocity being there is now it becomes important. Now it becomes a tangible conversation piece, and it's not just a guy who throws hard and needs to learn how to pitch. It's a guy who's learned how to pitch, and now he can throw hard. And so the velocity increase for Cristopher Sanchez in 2025, assuming he has the capability to sit in that high 96, 97 average range throughout the course of a 30-plus sample size start, I think it's threefold. So the first thing that I think is important for Cristopher Sanchez is he'll have the ability now to work up in the zone more on both sides of the plate. But I think specifically against right-handed hitters. Listen, you know that Cristopher Sanchez relies heavily on his ground ball rate. Last season, he was in the 95th percentile of ground ball rates. He generated ground balls on 58.3% of the contact that he generated in 2024. Sinker, right? Sinker, keep the ball down. Changeup, keep the ball down. Slider, keep the ball down. But the point is, he generated a lot of ground balls because of the fact that he primarily pitches down in the zone. And Julie, if we can show his pitch location for 2024, a season ago, this is Cristopher Sanchez's overlay against right-handed hitters in 2024. What do you notice is that upper third, those three quadrants up in the top, almost non-existent, almost not touched. And the reason is because that's by design. That's Cristopher Sanchez's, that's what he does well, right? He keeps the ball down, generates a lot of ground balls, generates a lot of topped contact, and that's done specifically for a reason. He only threw 18% of his total pitches in that upper three quadrants of the zone or up and out of the zone in 2024. So basically, letters up, he only threw a pitch, any pitch, not just the sinker, but any pitch up in the zone about 18% of the time. Especially against right-handed hitters, he likes to work down in the zone. And there's nothing wrong with that. That actually is a model of consistency that Cristopher Sanchez has strived for and has succeeded at. But I do think there is merit to him being able to spot 97 or 98 up in the zone occasionally when he needs to. It's going to give him the ability to change eye level. It's going to give him the ability to change swing paths. And listen, I say this all the time. You're probably tired of Tyler saying this at this point. I sound like a broken record. Fastballs up in the zone and above the zone are like death knells to hitters. Do you know how many hitters across Major League Baseball have the average bat velocity, the average swing velocity, and the skill set combined to hit fastballs up at their, hands, up at the letters and above? You could probably count it on one hand. It's Judge, it's Ohtani, it's Stanton, even with Stanton's average being down. Like, the guys with the crazy quick bat speeds, they're the guys that are still going to be able to get to it. But the bulk of Major League hitters, or the bulk of any hitters across any competition, are not going to catch up to velocity up in the zone. And so if he has the ability to spot 96 or 97 up in the zone on occasion, I'm not asking for it a ton, but I'm asking for an eye level change, a depth perception change, a change of speeds, right? It's that cliche of work fast, change speeds, throw strikes. I think the fourth thing you can add to that is change eye level. Eye level, I think, is so imperative to a skill set of a pitcher. I think it is an ultimate tool for pitchers to be able to change eye level on any given count. And so if he has the ability to throw 96 or 97, especially ahead in the count, even if it's not necessarily a strike, to use it as a purpose pitch, because that brings us to point number 2, which is setting up the changeup. And the changeup, listen, we know is Cristopher Sanchez's best pitch. I think, quite frankly, it's one of the best changeups in all of baseball. Last year, Cristopher Sanchez finished 10th in comparable vertical movement and 5th in comparable horizontal movement on similar changeups. And to give you an understanding of how Baseball Savant measures that, is comparable, meaning 2 miles an hour plus or minus, and within a half a foot of extension. Now, Cristopher Sanchez is in rare territory in extension. We're going to get to that in just a second. But his changeup velocity, and then pair it with the extension, is where you get comparable movement. He was 10th in vertical and 5th in horizontal movement. You know how good his changeup is. I think when you are able to play that off the fastball, it means something. When you're able to play it off of 94, 95, it's significant. When you're able to play it off of 96, 97, 98, it becomes even better. So let's talk about this for 2024 for just a second on that changeup, and we'll get back to the fastball in just a moment. Sanchez was barreled on just 1% of the changeups that he threw last season, which was good for the 77th percentile across baseball. He recorded 91 strikeouts on the changeup. He allowed just a 177 average, and he generated 34% whiff rate and 47% chase rate. 74% of his changeups, unsurprisingly, as you saw on the graphic below, were considered low, and 49% of them were arm side, meaning, on his left-hand side. The reason being is because he throws his changeup more to right-handed hitters than he does to left-handed hitters. So what basically that is saying is if Cristopher Sanchez has a desired location and a chosen destination for his changeup, it's down and away to right-handed hitters. That's his money pitch, right? That's his bread and butter pitch. And he has a willingness to throw it in any count. Now, he will throw it for strikes, but when he throws it for strikes, it's still down in the zone. So you could see by that graphic that we showed just a bit ago, the changeup moves this way, and it becomes more heavily relied upon down and away to right-handed hitters. And so when you see how good that pitch is, he has the ability to play his changeup kind of in any pitch, in any sequence, in any count. When the sinker's got more life to it, up in the zone specifically, that again is going to change eye level, and changing of eye level, again, is key. So when you have that overlay, it becomes an even more difficult pitch to hit, thanks to the velocity and the change of speeds of the fastball compared to the changeup, which gets us to point number 3, that change in speeds, tunneling, and arm action. You're going to hear me talk about tunneling all the time. I think it's so paramount to pitching success in 2025. Guys that tunnel well are some of the best pitchers across baseball. I would say more times than not, if you did an XY graph of the best tunnelers in baseball, and it's not an entirely uniform way to look at things, but if you were to do an XY graphic of the best tunnelers in baseball, you would find that the best tunnelers often are also the best pitchers. It's just another way of saying arm action, arm slot, and how you are as deceptive as you possibly can in keeping that same arm action on all of your pitches. Cristopher Sanchez does an excellent job of arm action and arm slot of his fastball and his changeup overlay. And really quickly, I do want to say, sometimes I'm going to say sinker, sometimes I'm going to say fastball with Sanchez. When I say fastball, I'm talking about the sinker primarily. But let's talk about the changeup for a second and the change in speed specifically. Last year, Cristopher Sanchez averaged 85.1 miles per hour on his changeup. It was the 132nd hardest average velocity amongst pitchers on the changeup. And I got to be honest with you, what I want to see off that changeup in 2025 is the exact same thing. I want to see that changeup sit 85, 86, and not above. Jesus Luzardo, for example, throws a heavy changeup. It's 89, 90. There's guys across baseball that throw heavy changeups that, maybe they deviate off their fastball 4 or 5 miles an hour. Cristopher Sanchez has the capability of a split in fastball changeup velocity of being as great as 10 or 11 miles an hour. That's so significant when your arm slot and your changeup arm slot is so pinpoint to your fastball arm slot and arm release. That means so much to the success of a pitcher when they're able to, on their two best pitches, have the similar arm slot, similar release point, similar extension. Just becomes harder to hit. On top of that, I think Sanchez's delivery is repeatable, it's fluid, it's simple, and his windup kind of makes for duplication of, from pitch to pitch, very easily achievable. But the one thing that I think Sanchez does really well on top of that is hide the baseball throughout his delivery. Let's take a look at the first screenshot I pulled here from Sunday's game against the Orioles. And this is courtesy of my friend, the pitching ninja, Rob Friedman. Let's go to Julia. I apologize. They're almost identical. The one, I guess, where he's higher up in his leg kick. Yes, please. So you're going to take a look at it there. What I see here is a couple of different things. It's a guy who's still hiding the ball pretty deep and hit to his delivery. You'll notice that the left hand does drop throughout his release or throughout his windup, and he tucks it behind that left hip. And again, it's about hiding the baseballs as best as you can. What you see here is a guy who's going to kind of go cross-body action. He sets up way on the right side of the rubber and has a little bit of that cross-body action. Because of the fact that he's so tall and his extension is so far down the mound, by the time that Cristopher Sanchez is done releasing this pitch, he's going to feel like he's on top of you. We can go to the second one now, Julia, to give a little bit further in-depth look at it. Hiding the baseball, cross-body. You don't see where Cristopher Sanchez's hip, his back hip is. You don't see where the baseball is. You don't see where his left arm is. And then he's going to come across this he's going to come across himself and fire in what feels almost like it should be a cross-action release, but he actually straightens out a little bit towards the end. And again, extension dictates that he's going to feel like he's on top of you. Cristopher Sanchez, I think, is primed for a massive season. Last year, he ranked 89th in the 89th percentile in extension at an average of 7 feet. For a guy that's 6'4" and gets barreling down the mound the way that he does, release point becomes even more difficult to pick up. It's just less time for a hitter to pick up on what pitch it's going to be. And when he's releasing from the same arm slot and releasing from the same arm angle, especially knowing how good the fastball and the changeup are, I think Cristopher Sanchez is due for an insane 2025 season. I am super excited for Sanchez. This is why I wanted to kind of headline the show with him today, because I think that Cristopher Sanchez is going to emerge as the second best starter in this team's rotation this season. And I think he's going to continue to build on the 2024 that he put together last season. All right, we are quickly running out of time. I apologize. Let's talk about some of our friends here at PHLY before we get to our bold prediction for the National League West. And whatever the moment is, it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide, and those 90 million users are treated to 780,000 live streams each season. My favorite thing about Bet365, I've been telling you about this for a while now, is the early payout action across the NBA, and the NHL. Let's talk about the NHL, for example. The Flyers have a lot of games coming up over the next couple of days, 7 in the next 13 to be exact, in your hometown team. If you feel like they are going to beat any of the teams that are coming up over the next few days by 3 goals or more, you'll get an early instant payout if your hometown team is up by 3 goals or more in any game on a straight bet or parlay, a selection that is marked as a winner. But it works for the NBA as well. If your team goes up by 20 in any given day, same thing. And of course, your Tuesday NBA tip-offs happening tomorrow. If you place a qualifying parlay bet totaling $20 or more on that day's game, you will get up to $20 in bonus bets. Terms and conditions do apply. And new customers, you have just a couple of weeks left for this. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. All you have to do is sign up using PHLY365 as the code, deposit $10, and place your first bet for $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win or you lose. Must be 21 and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, I don't even need the read for the next one. Let's talk about one of my favorite companies, and that is Shady Rays. I've been wearing my Shady Rays for years now. I switched over from another company for a multitude of reasons: comfortability, variability, and the variety that they have across their website. You can buy the sleeker, sportier pair of glasses. You could buy an aviator pair of glasses. You can get the traditional sunglasses. Any type of sunglasses that you want is available with our friends over at Shady Rays. Crystal clear optics, polarized lenses, incredibly durable frames, and comfortable frames. Listen, sometimes you get the frames that are tight up against your ears. They push your ears down. I've said for a while, listen, I'm you got to be self-aware. I've got big ears. You need a comfortable pair of lenses or of frames to go along with that. And if you're looking to get that last-minute shred session in, you want to get down onto the slopes for some skiing or some snowboarding, Shady Rays has some incredible deals on polarized snow goggles as well. So head on over to shadyrays.com. Use the code PHLY for 35% off your polarized sunglasses at checkout. And you can find out for yourself why Shady Rays is voted 5 stars by over 300,000 people, myself included. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. I talked for a while, and I apologize. I want to check in with our friends in the chat. Let's say hello to John Lemmerman and Chris Miller. Markel Futz, yes, a great old school 97.5 The Fanatic drop. No worries. Mickey Durkin, Elephant in the Room. Appreciate all of you for joining us. K-Red, thank you for all of you for joining us. I will do a better job as this thing goes on of checking into the chat because I admittedly don't do a good enough job. But we're quickly running out of time here, and we have one thing I need to talk about before we get out of here, which is, of course, our Monday, our weekly Monday bold prediction. We are now in the National League as we have 3 bold predictions left. Let's go to the National League West for our bold prediction. And my bold prediction for the NL West this year is that the Arizona Diamondbacks are the #1 wild card team. And not only that, I'm going to take a step further, and I'm going to say that the Diamondbacks win more games than every team in the National League except the LA Dodgers. Last year, the Diamondbacks led the league in runs scored with 886. The only 2 teams that scored more than 800 runs were the 2 teams that ended up going to the World Series, the Dodgers and the Yankees. But beyond that, the Diamondbacks finished first in RBI and OBP, second in hits, triples, average, total bags, slugging, and OPS. They were 5th in baseball in home runs and 9th in baseball in doubles. Safe to say the Diamondbacks offense wasn't the problem last year. Now, they did lose Christian Walker, who picked up 26 home runs and 52 extra base hits along with his 84 RBI. But they replaced him in an offseason trade and only ended up having to give up Slade Cecconi for Josh Naylor, who hit 31 home runs last year, had 58 extra base hits, and 108 RBI. So Josh Naylor actually had a statistical better year than Christian Walker did. Now, defensively, the Diamondbacks are going to get worse. Christian Walker, to me, is the best defensive first baseman in baseball. So I do believe that the Diamondbacks got worse defensively by losing Christian Walker, but the offense is going to be big. I also think the Diamondbacks are expecting what is going to be kind of termed a bounce-back year for Corbin Carroll. He was much better in the second half. He had a historically slow start to the 2024 season, but some projections have Corbin Carroll as up to a 5-WAR player heading into 2025. Now, the offense was never the problem. Last year, it was the pitching. The pitching was terrible. The Diamondbacks scored the most runs in baseball, but they also gave up the 5th most runs across the league. Only the Marlins, the Rockies, the Angels, and the White Sox were worse. No surprise. Who were the 4 worst teams in baseball last year? The Marlins, the White Sox, the Angels, and the Rockies. The fact that the Diamondbacks won 89 games last season was a testament to how good their offense was. So I think the Diamondbacks addressed it this offseason by, of course, adding Corbin Burns. And I think they're going to be looking for bounce-back years from Brandon Pfaadt and Merrill Kelly. Both of those guys were really, really good down the stretch and in the postseason for the Diamondbacks in 2024 and just weren't nearly as good in 25. I do think they could still conceivably add bullpen depth to this bullpen, but the one guy I think is going to be key for them, because last year Paul Sewald just didn't have what they needed as their everyday closer. Another guy who was really good in 23 or 24 when they acquired him from the Mariners just wasn't, or 23, just wasn't nearly as good in 24. Justin Martinez is a name to keep an eye on. If you haven't heard of Justin Martinez just yet, you will. The guy is a flamethrower. His average fastball velocity last year, 100.3. Now, he did have some command issues. He walked 11% of the hitters he faced, and effectively meaning he walked the hitter every other inning across the innings that he pitched. But if he can kind of slow his walk rate down just a little bit, I think he has the makings to be one of the next great dominant closers in baseball. So you add Burns, you're hoping for a couple of bounce-back years from Kelly and Pfaadt, and I think Eduardo Rodriguez as well. They signed him to a big-time free agent contract last year. He was underwhelming, but I think Eduardo Rodriguez is another guy that they're looking for some kind of a bounce-back year from. Fangraphs Models has the Diamondbacks winning 86 games. I think they're going to smash that this year. That's a team that I would hammer the over if 86 is the number. My bold prediction is they are going to be the top wildcard team in the National League this year. If you want like a scalding hot take, I think they win close to 100 games and win the second most games across the National League, only behind the LA Dodgers, which is unfortunate because I think they might win either division. If they win 97, 98 games, they might win either division, but I think they do end up being not just being one of the top wild cards, being the top wild card. A half an hour sure does go by fast, huh? All right, so big thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for joining in with us today. A lot of good conversation about the rotation, specifically about Cristopher Sanchez and what that means for Ranger and Jesus Luzardo. Yes, of course, a mention of Andrew Painter as well, who will be with the Phillies in some capacity at some point, I think, in 2025. If I were to pinpoint when I think that may be, probably closer to the back end of July, maybe the early portions of August. I don't think they're going to rush Andrew Painter unless it's out of necessity. But I do think that you will see Andrew Painter at some point in 2025. But the whole conversation here is that I think Cristopher Sanchez is set for a monster season. I am so bullish on Cristopher Sanchez this year. And I think that, I don't know what the numbers are. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's going to be Cy Young candidate Cristopher Sanchez. But I think that you're going to end up seeing a 1-2 punch at the top of the lineup that includes top of the rotation, that includes Zach Wheeler and Cristopher Sanchez at the end of the season. No disrespect to Aaron Nola or Ranger Suarez or Jesus Luzardo. I'm just so excited for the year that Cristopher Sanchez could have. So again, big thank you to everybody in the chat for joining us today. A big thank you to both Julia and Joey for producing. I know Julia is on her 17th show of the day and still has Eagles at 2 o'clock to come. So I appreciate Julia and all of her hard work as well. I will be back on Friday with a live show. We'll be back for an hour. We'll talk with Jim Salisbury. Hope to have another guest on as well. In the meantime, we'll have some fun video on demand content for you. Tomorrow, we're going to go from the high end of the rotation to the bottom end of the rotation. And we're going to talk about one Taijuan Walker. We'll do all of that and more over the next couple of days, and we'll talk to you live again here on PHLY this Friday coming up at 1 o'clock for a full hour. We'll talk to you then right here on PHLY.
We all silly like the mayor.